Beloved, mighty I am presence from the heart of God in the great central sun. We invoke the light of Alpha and Omega. We invoke balance in our hearts, minds, spirits, and souls, and in our bodies, O Lord. O Jesus, come into our temple. O Jesus, come into our temple. O Jesus, come into our temple. Let thy light descend, O God. Let enlightenment come upon us. Let the compassionate heart be ours. Establish now and intensify, O God, the love bond between all hearts who comprise the mystical body of God in heaven and on earth. We make the sign of the cross of cosmic fire. Let it descend. Let it be for the sealing of our life as a mission. Every life is a mission, O God. Show us the way. Our Lord has said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh to the Father but by me. Therefore, by the way of the eternal Tao, we desire to serve thee. Teach us, O God, this day. Teach us, quicken us, and enlighten us. In the name of the Divine Mother, Amen. Good afternoon again. Let us sing a bhajan, number 654. Please be seated.
Shiva Shambhu Hara Hara Shambhu
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 Pavanasha Kailasha Nivasa
Pavanasha Kailasha Nivasa
Pavanasha Kailasha Nivasa
Pavanasha Kailasha Nivasa
Parvati Pate Hare Pashupate
Parvati Pate Hare Pashupate
Parvati Pate Hare Pashupate
Parvati Pate Hare Pashupate
Gangadhara Shiva Gauri Pate
Gangadhara Shiva Gauri Pate
Hare Gangadhara Shiva Gauri Pate
Hare Gangadhara Shiva Gauri Pate
Shiva Shambhu Hara Hara Shambhu
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 Pavanasha Kailasha Nivasa
Pavanasha Kailasha Nivasa
Pavanasha Kailasha Nivasa
Pavanasha Kailasha Nivasa
Parvati Pate Hare Pashupate
Parvati Pate Hare Pashupate
Parvati Pate Hare Pashupate
Parvati Pate Hare Pashupate
Gangadhara Shiva Gauri Pate
Gangadhara Shiva Gauri Pate
Hare Gangadhara Shiva Gauri Pate
Hare Gangadhara Shiva Gauri Pate
Shiva Shambhu Hara Hara Shambhu
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 Pavanasha Kailasha Nivasa
Pavanasha Kailasha Nivasa
Pavanasha Kailasha Nivasa
Pavanasha Kailasha Nivasa
Parvati Pate Hare Pashupate
Parvati Pate Hare Pashupate
Parvati Pate Hare Pashupate
Parvati Pate Hare Pashupate
Gangadhara Shiva Gauri Pate
Gangadhara Shiva Gauri Pate
Hare Gangadhara Shiva Gauri Pate
Hare Gangadhara Shiva Gauri Pate
Shiva Shambhu Hara Hara Shambhu
Shiva Shambho Hara Hara Shambho
Shiva Shambhu Hara Hara Shambhu
Shiva Shambho Hara Hara Shambho
Pavanasha Kailasha Nivasa
Pavanasya Kailasha Nivasa
Pavanasha Kailasha Nivasa
Pavanasya Kailasha Nivasa
Parvati Pate Hare Pashupate
Parvati Pate Hare Pashupate
Parvati Pate Hare Pashupate
Parvati Pate Hare Pashupate
Gangadhara Shiva Gauri Pate
Gangadhara Shiva Gauri Pate
Hare Gangadhara Shiva Gauri Pate
Hare Gangadhara Shiva Gauri Pate
Shiva Shambhu Hara Hara Shambhu
Shiva Shambho Hara Hara Shambho
Shiva Shambhu Hara Hara Shambhu
Shiva Shambho Hara Hara Shambho
Pavanasha Kailasha Nivasa
Pavanasya Kailasha Nivasa
Pavanasha Kailasha Nivasa
Pavanasya Kailasha Nivasa
Parvati Pate Hare Pashupate
Parvati Pate Hare Pashupate
Parvati Pate Hare Pashupate
Parvati Pate Hare Pashupate
Gangadhara Shiva Gauri Pate
Gangadhara Shiva Gauri Pate
Hare Gangadhara Shiva Gauri Pate
Hare Gangadhara Shiva Gauri Pate
Shiva Shambhu Hara Hara Shambhu
Shiva Shambho Hara Hara Shambho
Shiva Shambhu Hara Hara Shambhu
Shiva Shambho Hara Hara Shambho
Pavanasa Kailasha Nivasa
Pavanasya Kailasha Nivasa
Pavanasha Kailasha Nivasa
Pavanasya Kailasha Nivasa
Parvati Pate Hare Pashupate
Parvati Pate Hare Pashupate
Parvati Pate Hare Pashupate
Parvati Pate Hare Pashupate
Gangadhara Shiva Gauri Pate
Gangadhara Shiva Gauri Pate
Hare Gangadhara Shiva Gauri Pate
Hare Gangadhara Shiva Gauri Pate
Shiva Shambho Hara Hara Shambho
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 Pavanasha Kailasha Nivasa
Pavanasya Kailasha Nivasa
Pavanasha Kailasha Nivasa
Pavanasya Kailasha Nivasa
Parvati Pate Hare Pashupate
Parvati Pate Hare Pashupate
Parvati Pate Hare Pashupate
Parvati Pate Hare Pashupate
Gangadhara Shiva Gauri Pate
Gangadhara Shiva Gauri Pate
Hare Gangadhara Shiva Gauri Pate
Hare Gangadhara Shiva Gauri Pate
Shiva Shambhu Hara Hara Shambhu
Please be seated. Take out your notebooks. How you can celebrate your immortality every day of your life. The English poet Samuel Taylor Coleridge once wrote, "There is in every human countenance either a history or a prophecy. If we are wise, we can read in a man's countenance the history or prophecy of his character and his deeds. But what is just as important is that we can read in a man's countenance the history or prophecy of his health. In fact, the health of the organs and systems of your body is reflected not only in your face, but in your entire body. The art of judging character and temperament by a person's facial and bodily characteristics is called physiognomy. Michio Kushi, the leading exponent of macrobiotics today, writes that physiognomy is the principal tool for the macrobiotic diagnosis of good or bad health. He says, physiognomy is based on understanding the dynamic relationship between complementary and antagonistic structures and functions within the body and psyche. After birth and in later life, each area of the face corresponds with an inner organ and its functions, as well as emotions and character traits associated with the underlying physiological condition. When an internal organ or system is imbalanced, symptoms of disorder will appear on the face as well. End of quote from Michio Kushi. Indeed, your face tells the history and the prophecy of your life. If you want to know, the features on your face and body can tell you what are your strengths and weaknesses, those you were born with. This is called your constitution. And those you have acquired since you were born. This is called your condition. Your features can also tell you where your health is headed. Today we will study how facial and bodily characteristics reveal the strengths and weaknesses of the constitution you were born with. This review of macrobiotic diagnosis is based largely on Michio Kushi's teachings. His 2 books on this subject are How to See Your Health, Book of Oriental Diagnosis, and Your Face Never Lies. Another excellent book that teaches Oriental diagnosis is Reading the Body, Ohashi's Book of Oriental Diagnosis, by Ohashi with Tom Monty. In later lectures, I will show you how the features of your face and body reveal the strengths and weaknesses you have acquired since you were born, resulting in the current condition of your health. The telltale signs in your face and body are a product of the diet and lifestyle you have chosen by your free will. Nanboku Mizuno, the father of modern Japanese physiognomy, who lived in the late 1700s, emphasized the importance of these 2 factors, diet and lifestyle. He said that although our appearance and personality are for the most part inherited, they can also be greatly influenced by our diet and lifestyle. I am presenting these lectures to you on diagnosing your constitution and current condition because it is a mandate of the Ascended Masters that you learn to diagnose yourself. Self-diagnosis is the foundation of self-knowledge in all planes of being. To attain adeptship in this life, in this body, you must be able to read the history and the prophecy of your health. Yes, you must become the historian and the prophet of your health. The handwriting you yourself have written on every living or dead cell of your body. Those who are asleep awake to the fact that they have a serious illness when it is too late. When asked what he was, God, angel, or saint, Gautama Buddha replied, "I am awake." Today, I have come in the name of Gautama Buddha to shake you awake. I will no longer allow you to sleep the sleep of self-ignorance. That is the death first of the body, then of the mind, then of the heart, and finally of the soul. You must learn to read the early warning signs of disease in your body so you can take steps to prevent or heal sickness before it is too late. First, I will define the difference between constitution and condition. Constitution is defined as the physical makeup of the individual, consisting of inherited qualities and tendencies modified by environment. Michio Kushi writes, The human physical and mental constitution at birth is derived from the biological quality of our parents, grandparents, and ancestors, in other words, our genes. Mental and physical influences from the mother, and especially diet during her pregnancy, are the single most important factor in our development. End of Cushy's quote. Another factor that determines our constitution is our karma. The role of our karma, as well as that of the soul pattern of our life stream, cannot be underestimated. Yet, we are endowed by God with the power to transcend our karma, our soul pattern, and even the limits put upon us by parents who did not do better because they did not know better. The first step on the path of self-transcendence is to forgive our parents and to forgive ourselves. Father, Mother, God, forgive us, for we knew not what we did. We invoke the violet flame of the Holy Spirit to banish the darkness of self-ignorance and restore the light of self-knowledge. Cushy says, constitutional traits include bone structure, muscle and skin condition, height, size of head, hands, and feet, and relative strength of the internal organs, including the heart. End of quote. The Constitution indicates the basic strength of your body. A body can be strong and well-built, or it can be less strong or even weak. When it is strong and well-built, it is called yang. When it is less strong or weak, it is called yin. Hardly anyone has a totally yang or totally yin constitution. Your constitution has both yang and yin elements. You must give thoughtful consideration to the strengths and weaknesses in your constitution and in your children's constitution. You must be careful not to further weaken the weaker parts of your body by eating wrong foods. You must also work on strengthening the weaker parts of your body by eating the right kinds of foods. The constitution of a child is mainly formed during the 9 months of pregnancy and the first 3 years of life. After the first 3 years of life, you can still strengthen your constitution by the foods you eat, but it takes much longer to do so. Mothers, your egg plus what you eat during the 9 months of your pregnancy directly affects your child's constitution and his soul potential for the rest of his life. Fathers, your sperm and what you have eaten in your life will also make the difference in your child's constitution. Now you know. Now you can change. But woe to the Chela who knows and does not change. According to Michio Kushi, sperm quality is being transformed dramatically every day by the father's food intake, while the mother's egg quality changes more gradually over several months. Fathers and mothers, your diet up to the moment of conception, next to the quality of sperm and egg, determines your child's constitution. You and you alone are responsible for your child's endowment of the gifts and graces of God and his own past lives. Because you are building the house his soul will live in, you are giving him the strong or weak structure that will house his spiritual, mental, psychological, and physical characteristics, strong or weak. Children coming into embodiment today bring with them the vast potential of their causal body and of momentums of past lives. The better the physical body we give them, the stronger the brain, the heart, and all of the systems, the more they will be able to draw down from their causal body and draw upon the momentums and graces from their past lives as well as from God. Without the chalice, those talents and those geniuses may not come through. In contrast to your constitution, your condition indicates the present state of your health. Your condition can change from moment to moment. Kushi says, after birth, day to day, month to month, and year to year fluctuations in our health and vitality are referred to as conditional changes, changes in your condition. These include changing skin quality, hair quality, voice and speech patterns, and the functioning of the internal organs, including the functioning of the heart. End of Kushi's quote. Let us then take up the study of the constitution by analyzing the facial and bodily characteristics of different people. In addition to constitution and condition, a person's personality traits are also indicated in their physical features. Although that is not the subject of this lecture, I will comment now and then on how personality traits relate to physical features. To lay the groundwork for your understanding of how your constitution is affected by yin and yang foods, I will explain briefly what is a yin food and what is a yang food. Michio Kushi describes a yin food as one that produces a result or tendency toward expansion, decomposition, softening, loosening, and other similar effects of the muscles, tissues, organs, glands, and their functions. Yang foods produce a result or tendency toward contraction, composition, hardening, gathering, and other similar effects of the muscles, tissues, organs, glands, and their functions. End of Kushi's quote. This is the basis for the macrobiotic teaching on how food affects your constitution and condition. Mothers, if you eat too much food that is overly yang or overly yin during pregnancy, your child will develop an imbalance of yang or yin characteristics. Any of you who choose to hear me can then choose to believe me or not. But I tell you that my words are true and that they are just. If you eat too much food that is overly yang or yin, your condition will get out of balance, either too yang or too yin. Remember, the goal of life is to be in balance, to be in harmony with the great Tao, not too yang and not too yin. And that means physically as well as emotionally, mentally and spiritually. Kushi says, all foods are composed of both yin and yang characteristics, but different in proportions. Herman I. Hara explains, the yin-yang characteristic of foods is affected by their origin, species, season, and method of growing, cooking, way of storage, and all other factors influencing them. End of Ihara's quote. Apples, for example, are yin. Meat is yang. You can make apples more yang by drying them. You can make meat more yin by cooking it with vegetables. Ihara says, yin foods have a tendency to cool the body, reduce tension, slow down movement, prolong sleeping time, and cause excretion to be loose and have less color. If eaten in excess for your condition, yin foods make you tired, cause anemia, paleness, loss of appetite, and slowness in speaking. If you have a yin condition, eating in excess of yin foods will make it worse. Yang foods have a tendency to warm the body, cause tension, speed up movement, lessen sleeping time, and cause excretion to be harder and darker. When taken in excess, they can cause fever, a reddish face, constipation, and rapid speech. End of Ihara's quote. Now for the moment of truth. Keepers of the flame of the Tao, dare you look? Not too strong, is it? And if you dare look, are you willing to see?
Yes.
Sounds like someone is really weary over here. And if you are willing to see, are you willing to act?
Yes.
And if you are willing to act, are you willing to start a revolution in your body?
Yes.
Great. El Morya says, "We shall see what fiber you are made of. And we shall see if you are really willing to remake yourself in the image and likeness of God, physically, mentally, emotionally, and psychologically, so you can become a spiritually enlightened being. We shall see if you are truly ready to be a Chela of El Morya in the flesh of your brain and your central nervous system, in your heart of flesh, in your blood and your lymphatic fluid, in your glands, in your lungs, stomach, pancreas, and spleen, in your liver, gallbladder, and small and large intestines, in your kidneys, bladder, and reproductive organs. El Morya needs Chelas in the flesh. Are you ready to give him your body and your blood as he has given you, the Alpha and the Omega of his ascended master light body?
Yes.
This is the proposition of the divine interchange of being the Tao, you being that Tao as above in your causal body, here below in this body. You give me your body and I'll give you mine is the pact between the Guru and the Chela with a capital C. Chelas of El Morya, are you ready, willing, and able to receive El Morya's ascended master light body?
Yes.
Then are you willing to give him yours?
Yes.
Then are you willing to make your body acceptable to the master? Then are you ready for El Morya to occupy your body?
Yes.
Chelas of El Morya, by thy word thou shalt be justified, and by thy word thou shalt be judged. Now let us take up this most interesting study. In our first slide, you see George Villiers, Duke of Buckingham, who lived from 1592 to 1698. He has what we would call a yin constitution. Signs of a yin constitution are a long, narrow face, a long neck, a short body, long legs, small hands, or long, thin hands with long, thin fingers, small feet or long, thin feet, fragile, thinner, weaker bones, big eyes, a long, thin nose, a big mouth, and small ears. Got that? Most fashion models have many yin characteristics. William Tara writes in his book, Macrobiotics and Human Behavior, the individual with a more yin constitution has less physical vitality and a more pronounced emphasis on the intellectual or aesthetic approach to life. Physical reserves are lower, and there is a tendency for illness to manifest more regularly, with a more profound influence on the overall life pattern. The individual with a yin constitution is usually easily influenced by those around him or her, and is more comfortable when dealing with the abstract than with the practical. In the extreme, this can produce an overly cautious approach to life. End of quote by Tara. In the average person, the proportion of the head to the body is in vertical length is 1 to 7, as depicted in this slide. This means that the body is 7 times longer than the length of the head. If your head is smaller than average, for instance, if your body is 8 times longer than the length of your head, you have more of a yin constitution. This indicates a tendency toward a weaker physical and mental constitution. An elongated body is in part the result of the excessive yin foods your mother consumed during pregnancy. It also results from the excessive yin foods you ate during your growing up years. Here again is George Villiers. The proportion of his head to his body is 1 to 8. This is Stephen Arnold Douglas, American statesman and orator. He was born in 1813 and died in 1861. He was Lincoln's powerful opponent in the famous Lincoln-Douglas debates. Douglas, who was nicknamed the Little Giant for his small stature and skill in debate, has many yang features. Signs of a yang constitution are a round or more square face, a short neck, a long torso, short legs, large hands that are wider rather than long, large feet, stronger bones, wide wrists, thick knuckles, and broad shoulders. Douglas's shoulders are not as wide as the shoulders of some people who have a yang constitution. Other signs of a yang constitution are small, but not too small, deep-set eyes, a well-built nose and well-developed nostrils, a narrow mouth and large ears. A large, well-defined jaw is another sign of a yang constitution. Hardly anybody has all yang features or all yin features. One yin feature in Douglas that you can see is his large mouth. Douglas's head-to-body ratio is 1 to 6. If your head is vertically larger than average in proportion to the rest of your body, you have a yang constitution. It also indicates that your physical and mental constitution may be stronger than average. The more yang your constitution is, the easier it is for you to stay balanced physically as well as emotionally and to live a long and active life. William Tara writes, "The individual with a more yang constitution tends to have a high degree of vitality, resistance to illness, and greater physical reserves. This results in a desire to be more active in the exploration of the environment, confidence in physical capacities, and a characteristic single-mindedness. If there is an imbalance toward yang, it can be translated into a sense of bravado and an overstepping of conventional boundaries of behavior." That is the end of Tara's quote. It is generally easier for a person with a yang constitution to stay healthy. But you shouldn't be overly concerned if you have a weaker or yin constitution. If you have a yin constitution, you just have to be a bit more careful because you are more prone to getting sick. If you have a yin constitution, it is easier for you to become imbalanced, both physically and emotionally, when you eat too much yin food. Too much yin food doesn't create so much of an imbalance in people with a yang constitution. For example, if you have a weak constitution, a yin constitution, and you eat 2 grapefruits during the wintertime, you would most likely get a sore throat the next day. Grapefruit is an extremely yin food. If you have a yang constitution, eating 2 grapefruit would probably not have an immediate physical effect upon you. However, you might experience a sudden change in your emotions. You need to remember that what you put in your mouth will affect your emotional and mental state. How you feel within an hour, 15 minutes to an hour to 2 hours after you have eaten should tell you what that substance did to your body, your mind, and your emotions. Ihara says, in terms of our mentality, yin foods tend to cause yin emotions and thinking, such as fear, suspicion, sentimentality, worry, and resentment. When people start drinking beer, they get very sentimental because beer is a yin substance. Yang foods cause such yang emotions and thinking as hostility, aggressiveness, noisiness, and ruthlessness. These symptoms do not appear immediately or necessarily all together, but if you continue to eat either too much yin or yang food over an extended period, you will begin to see these signs of an unbalanced condition. End of Ihara's quote. Now, even if you have a strong yang constitution rather than a weaker yin constitution, that doesn't mean that you are scot-free. If year in, year out, you keep letting yourself get out of balance by what you eat, you could develop problems in your health. As Herman Ihara writes, if we eat mostly foods in which yin factors are in excess, our condition becomes yin, regardless of our constitution. If we continue eating such food, our constitution gradually becomes yin, and we lose the endowment that we had at birth. On the other hand, if we eat foods in which yang factors predominate, our condition becomes yang, and in the long run, our constitution likewise becomes more yang. That's the end of Ihara's quote. So just as abuse of the laws of nature, the laws of the Tao and of yin and yang, can cost you your health, so your obedience to the laws of nature can actually improve your health and strengthen the constitution you were born with. As far as your day-to-day condition goes, it is best to have a balanced condition or one that is slightly on the yang side. Being too yin or too yang means that your physical condition is out of balance. Some signs of an overly yin condition are slowness in movement, speech, and thought, becoming easily fatigued, forgetfulness, and complaining. Some signs of an overly yang condition are impatience, aggressiveness, hostility, ruthlessness, being too tight, too quick, or too talkative. If you have a balanced emotional condition, you have the vision of what you want to accomplish, but you are flexible. If you have a yin condition, you tend to lose the vision of your goals and keep changing your mind. When your condition is in balance, you are quick in thought and movement. You do not forget anything. You can be quiet and peaceful, or you can be quick and active. You can be flexible or immovable, whatever the moment requires. When your condition is in balance, you have a strong base, as well as flexibility. You are like a tree that has strong roots and a flexible trunk. When the strong winds come, you aren't uprooted, and your trunk doesn't snap. You are able to stand firm and meet the challenges and the needs of the hour. That definition puts you in line of being the vessel for El Morya. Whichever way El Morya is positioning himself, whatever his mood is, you are flexible to be in that vibration, to be in that sense of responsiveness and attunement. You're not intransigent. You're not unmovable. The master comes along, and even if he bops you over the head, you don't get it. You go in your same old plodding way. This is very important. I'll never forget the story that a disobedient Chela of El Morya told me many years ago. She was an older woman and had been in one of the former activities of the Ascended Masters. And she spoke to me of how El Morya had pleaded with her to perform a certain task for him. And El Morya came to her 3 times and asked her to perform this task, which was very important to him. And on each occasion, she refused. It had been about 25 years since she had refused. And she said the master never returned to her again. I don't know why she told me that story, but she did tell me that story. And I remember the characteristic that I noticed most about her was her intransigence combined with her pride. And her pride went along with her great wealth. And somehow people who have great wealth immunize themselves to being responsive to God, to man, to the needs of a little child or whatever. I thought it was tragic because this woman had had a history of embodiments of failing the master and failing the brotherhood, and she knew it well, and she wasn't happy. So that flexibility is a wonderful gift. Moria talks about sending Blavatsky to southern India and suddenly changing her plans and sending her to the north, or vice versa. She was flexible and she obeyed. Let's take a look at what your head and face can tell you about your constitution. Our next slide is Captain Frederick Benteen. He was born in 1834 and died in 1898. Serving under Lieutenant Colonel George Custer, Benteen survived the famous 1876 Battle of the Little Bighorn, fought in the valley of the Little Bighorn River in Montana. This battle took place about 60 miles southeast of Billings. A person with a young constitution like Benteen has a head that is round or square, not oval or peaked, a normally developed forehead that is not too high, a well-developed jaw and chin, and well-developed cheeks. He has well-proportioned and large ears. This is George Armstrong Custer. He was born in 1839. He died in the Battle of the Little Bighorn in 1876. The face of a person with a yin constitution like Custer is long and narrower. It looks like an upside-down teardrop. The face is large at the top and narrow at the chin. He has less developed cheeks, jaw and chin, and smaller ears. The one young feature in Custer's face is his small, close-set eyes. We will now turn to the study of how the strength of your individual organs is reflected in your specific facial features. First, we will discuss what your ears can tell you about your constitution. The position and shape of your ears reflect your overall physical and mental constitution, and especially the strength of your kidneys. Ears that extend from the level of the eyes to the level of the mouth indicate a healthy constitution and strong kidneys, as you see in this slide. This is Shur Ali Mislima from Azerbaijan, west of the Caspian Sea. When this picture was taken, Soviet gerontologists claimed that he was 168 years old, which might be slightly exaggerated. At that time, he still rode horseback and tended an orchard that he had planted in the 1870s. He married his 120-year-old wife 102 years ago. In someone with a healthy constitution, the lower part of the ear attaches to the head around the nose level. From there, the lobes extend down to the mouth level. Ears that are large, thick, set low on the head, have large lobes, and lie flat against the head indicate strong kidneys and a strong overall constitution. This man's ears show all these characteristics. If you have such ears, you have the constitutional strength to live a long, long life, as long as you don't misuse this gift by overindulging in the wrong foods. Ears that are small, thin, higher set on the head, and have small earlobes or no earlobes indicate a weakness in the kidneys. What do you do when you have this knowledge? You realize that you can take special care of the kidneys. There are many supports that you can give to the kidneys. This is why knowledge is so important. Large, thick ears that lie close to your head are the result of balanced, well-cooked food eaten by your mother before birth and by you after birth. People with such ears are said to be broad-minded and have great comprehension. The bigger your ears, the better your constitution. Dumbo must have the greatest constitution in the world. Small ears indicate that your mother consumed too much animal food during her pregnancy, especially meat, poultry, and eggs, and too many baked flour products. Thin ears develop when there is not a correct nutritional balance. Thin ears often show a tendency toward prejudice. Ears positioned high on your head are the result of your mother's diet consisting of an excessive amount of animal food during pregnancy. A person with such ears may be sharp and aggressive. Small earlobes or no earlobes are caused by an imbalanced diet, especially lacking in minerals. The size of your earlobes indicates the amount of minerals from vegetarian sources that your mother consumed during pregnancy. A nutritionally well-balanced, mainly vegetarian diet of a mother results in large earlobes. Large ears with large earlobes are a sign of longevity. Ideally, the earlobe should be clearly separated from the head. Large ears with earlobes well separated from the head are an indication of clear functioning of the brain and nervous system. In women, they also indicate sound reproductive organs. In the past, leaders proverbially had large ears. When you watch the news, watch the ears. Winston Churchill is a good example of this. Today, leaders still tend to have large ears, but not as large as in the past. During the last 2 generations, people's ears generally have become much smaller. People born at the turn of the century have large ears, with hardly an exception. After the 1930s, there was quite a dramatic reduction in ear size in the general population of many nations. Around this time, people started to consume more refined foods which provide less minerals. Since earlobes are formed by the minerals in the body, the size of the earlobes was reduced, and the general strength and constitution of the population was decreased. Your ears are like your batteries. The larger your ears, the more reserve you have for a long life. The smaller your ears, the less reserve you have. So you have to work at longevity a little harder. But even if you have a weak constitution indicated by small ears, it is still possible for you to give birth to children with good overall constitutions, which means they will be born with larger ears than you. Because you see, the large ears are in the gene pool, but we can't bring them forth unless we eat the right diet. So here's how to. Pregnant mothers must eat a well-balanced diet. A diet consisting of a balanced amount of minerals, proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. Some people have even been known to change the shape of their own ears by their eating habits. Kushi says in his book, Your Face Never Lies, that after eating macrobiotic foods for several years, many people experience a change in the shape of the ear. The lobe will even develop a fissure and detach a little, then heal up. End of quote by Kushi. The upper area of the ear, when it is abnormally enlarged, shows a yin constitution of the pancreas. It indicates a potential for developing hyper or hypoglycemia. This can result from a mother eating too many sweets, fruits, and dairy products during pregnancy. The next feature we will study is the space between the eyes and the space between the eyebrows. This area indicates the constitution of your liver and gallbladder. This is a photograph of King Edward VII, King of Great Britain and Ireland. He lived from 1841 to 1910. He was the oldest son of Queen Victoria and one of the most popular of English princes. The distance between his eyes is slightly less than the width of a single eye. If you want to measure this on yourself, just take your 2 fingers, measure your eye, and see whether it's the same distance between your 2 eyes, less or more. When the distance between your eyes is the width of 1 eye or a little less, you have a strong liver. This is the famous French playwright Molière, who lived from 1622 to 1673. A constitutional weakness in the liver is indicated by eyes that are widely separated, as you can see in this painting of Molière. Weakness in your liver can cause a lack of vitality and a tendency toward isolation. Another sign of a weak liver is eyes that are too large. A weak liver is caused by an excess of yin foods in the pregnant mother's diet, a lack of yang or strength in her food, and a lack of mineral-rich foods. People who eat a mostly fruit diet often bring forth children with large eyes set wide apart. A liver that is constitutionally overly young is indicated by the following signs: eyebrows that slant downward toward the middle of the face, eyebrows that are close together or totally together, eyes that are too small or too close together, and eyes that cross. People with an overly yang liver have a tendency to be domineering, irritable, and insensitive. An overly yang liver is the result of too much yang food, especially meat and eggs, in the pregnant mother's diet. Now suppose you have an overly yang liver, and you have a tendency that therefore has developed from the physical to the emotional body of being domineering, irritable, and insensitive to others. How can your liver be the vessel of El Moria? How can you be a chilas of El Moria through your liver, which carries over to your emotional state, which constantly brings you back to that point of being domineering, irritable, and insensitive, and not even realizing that you are that way? This is why we need to understand how to revitalize and resurrect the true functioning of our organs. The liver carries the live records of our karma. So sometimes the poor liver and the toxicity of the liver has to do with what we are eating today, as well as our constitution. But it also is an inherited condition which we inherit from ourselves, from our past lives. So if we can't work at perfecting ourselves in all levels, even if we work at the spiritual and psychological level, I have found, as I have observed people, that unless they overcome the physical problem itself that is causing them to have a certain disposition, they simply can't fight it. They can make all kinds of resolutions, they can do all kinds of decrees, they can weep and wail because they can't overcome this disposition that they don't like in themselves. But until the actual physical organ that corresponds to that emotion is cleared, they cannot carry the pure and the right emotion of that organ. So not even resolving your psychological problems will change that domineering, irritable, insensitive liver that you are manifesting. You've got to heal the liver by right diet and other means, so many means that are available to us. Next, we will consider the eyes and eyebrows. Small eyes, as you see on the girl in this picture, are more yang. Small eyes are formed when the mother eats well-cooked foods of vegetable or animal origin. Small eyes indicate vitality, physical strength and endurance, as well as self-confidence and determination. You can observe the focus in this child's eyes. There is a determination, a sense of, I know who I am and I know where I'm going. There's a set of the nose, the set of the mouth, and even the set of the strong jaw. This child is now 3 years old, and indeed is a determined, active, and self-confident little person who keeps her mother and teacher very busy. I would like you to notice the large ears and earlobes. That didn't happen by accident. This child's ears are much larger than her mother's. Her mother was consciously aware of following the right diet during pregnancy. Large eyes, as shown in our next slide, are more yin. People with abnormally large eyes, even bigger than the ones in this slide, often have a tendency to develop nervous disorders. Abnormally large eyes are the result of an excess in yin foods during the mother's pregnancy, such as fruits, fruit juices, less cooked vegetables, and raw vegetables. People with large eyes are noted for being gentle, delicate, and mentally sensitive. The eyes of this baby are also set wide apart, which I said was a sign of a yin constitution of the liver. Large eyes and eyes set far apart often appear together in the same person. The distance between the two eyes and the distance between the eyebrows also indicates the constitution of the spleen and pancreas. You can see that the width between the eyes is greater than the width of one eye. Eyes that are positioned too close together indicate that the pancreas and spleen, along with the liver and gallbladder, tend to easily suffer distress. This weakness is due to the mother's excessive intake of overly cooked salty vegetables and animal foods, such as meat, eggs, poultry, fish, and dairy. Now I'm talking about eyes positioned too close together. Eyes that are positioned too far apart indicate that the pancreas, liver, and gallbladder are constitutionally weaker. The upper bridge of the nose and the outside of the temples also indicate the constitution of the spleen and pancreas. Deep-set eyes are more young, as you see in this photograph. This is Jeff Summers, a member of the International Trans-Antarctica Expedition. Protruding eyes are more yin. We can see this feature in Queen Victoria of Great Britain. She lived from 1819 to 1901. Protruding eyes. Your eyebrows indicate your constitutional vitality. Full eyebrows are a sign of a strong constitution. Long eyebrows that are at least as long as the eye itself show the potential for a long life. If your eyebrows are set far apart, you have a tendency for disorders in the gallbladder. If a mother eats a mainly vegetarian diet during pregnancy, her baby will have eyebrows that start above the inner corner of the eye and are straight, curving down toward the outside of the face. You can see such eyebrows in the little girl in this slide. If a child is fed a balanced, mainly vegetarian diet, his eyebrows will be thick and long. This is another child in our community who has been given the macrobiotic diet. Eating an unbalanced diet that includes an excess of extreme yin and yang foods can reduce the length of the eyebrows. Eyebrows that are positioned high above the eyes are more yin, as you can see in this photograph of Winston Churchill. Eyebrows that are positioned close to the eyes are more yang. You can see such eyebrows in this photograph of Dr. Edwin H. Land, inventor of the Polaroid Land camera, which allows us to see his eyebrows. The next slide is of Henry VIII, King of England, who lived from 1491 to 1547. His eyebrows slant downward towards the middle of his face, downward toward the nose and toward the middle of the face. This feature is caused by an overconsumption of animal food in the pregnant mother's diet. Eyebrows that slant downward toward the middle of the face often indicate an aggressive character. Henry was a tyrannical, emotional man with a fearsome temper. He dealt harshly with those who failed to further his agenda. he turned against all his ministers, including his Chancellor Sir Thomas More, whom he had beheaded in 1535. Here is Ludwig van Beethoven, widely considered to be the greatest composer who ever lived. He was born in Bonn, Germany in 1770. Beethoven's eyebrows also slanted downward toward the middle of his face. He was known for his aggressive and quarrelsome character. Eyebrows that slant up and down like inverted V's show that the pregnant mother's diet consisted of too many extreme yin and extreme yang foods. People with this feature may have problems being consistent. They don't know which way their eyebrows are going, up or down. Our next slide shows a man who has full eyebrows, large ears, and well-developed earlobes. These features show his strong constitution and vitality. His very posture suggests that he's on the move. Full eyebrows and large ears with well-developed earlobes are often combined on a person's face when his mother ate a well-balanced, mainly vegetarian diet during her pregnancy and fed her child the same diet after birth. Next, we will study what your nose can tell you about your constitution. The shape of your nose signifies the size, condition, and quality of your brain, heart, and nervous system. As Michio Kushi writes, a well-formed nose with average length and roundness shows a balanced mentality. As you can see in this picture of Princess Victoria Louise of Germany, born in 1892. This kind of nose also indicates a strong heart. Kushi says, a straight and longer nose shows a more sensitive, nervous quality, as you can see in this slide of Louis II de Bourbon, Prince de Condé, who lived from 1621 to 1686. This kind of straight, longer, more narrow nose also indicates a weakness in the heart. Kushi says a short, flatter nose shows a tendency toward determination. That's the end of Kushi's quote. You can see this kind of nose in this picture of a Navajo woman. She shows great determination, centeredness, and focus. A larger nose, if not abnormally large, says Kushi, shows a larger thinking capacity. You can see this larger nose in this picture of George Washington. A larger nose also indicates a strong heart. A larger nose like Washington's shows an even stronger heart than the nose of average length and roundness that we saw in the picture of Princess Victoria Louise. Next, we will take up the nostrils and cheeks. Your nostrils and cheeks indicate the constitutional strength of your lungs. Wide nostrils are usually seen in combination with well-developed cheeks. Both features show strong lungs. Underdeveloped nostrils are usually seen in combination with less developed cheeks. Both of these features show weakness in your lungs. Underdeveloped nostrils indicate a tendency toward pneumonia, bronchitis, asthma, or tuberculosis. In men, less developed nostrils also indicate less male vitality. You can see underdeveloped nostrils in this painting of Maximilian I and his family. Maximilian I was a Habsburg. He was the Holy Roman Emperor and a German king. He lived from 1459 to 1519. He greatly increased the territory and power of the Habsburgs during his lifetime. As I said, underdeveloped nostrils indicate a tendency toward tuberculosis. It is interesting to note that tuberculosis came to be known as the Habsburg disease because so many Habsburgs died of tuberculosis. Look at every one of the members of that family. They all have small nostrils. The mouth and lips are the next features we will study. Your mouth tells you the strength of your digestive system. If your mouth is the same width as, or is narrower than, the width of your nose, you were born with a strong digestive system. Narrower than, or the width of your nose. A narrow mouth is formed when the mother eats a balanced diet with enough mineral-rich foods, especially during the 2nd and 3rd months of her pregnancy. The first 3 months of pregnancy tell all in the forming of your child's constitution. When the mother consumes an excess of yin foods during pregnancy, such as sweets, fruits, beverages, oil, and fat, there isn't enough yang contracting power to properly contract the wide open gap in the embryo's face that is to become the mouth. This may cause her to bring forth a child with a large mouth and therefore a weaker digestive system. A mouth that is horizontally wide but not necessarily vertically fat often shows an unbalanced physical and mental constitution as well as a weak digestive system. This characteristic can be seen in Martin Luther, the German leader of the Protestant Reformation, who lived from 1483 to 1546. A wide mouth often indicates that the qualities of endurance, self-discipline, and perseverance are lacking. A weakness in the digestive system often shows up as soon as the child is born in problems like gas, colic, constipation, diarrhea, or allergies. If your upper lip and lower lip are unequal in size, you have an imbalance in the digestive system. The upper lip signifies the condition of the esophagus and stomach, and the lower lip shows the condition of the area of the small and large intestines. If either or both of the lips is swollen, there is an imbalance in the corresponding areas. In a balanced constitution, the vertical width of the upper and lower lips will be the same. People originating from tropical or yang climates such as Africa often have wide yin lips. People originating from colder or more yin climates have thinner or more yang lips, as you see in this painting of Gianavera da Benci by Leonardo da Vinci. Very thin-lipped people are usually strong, but often tend to be inflexible. The reason someone living in a hotter climate has more yin features is because he eats yin foods that naturally grow in a yang climate. The hot climate brings forth foods we would consider yin, but these foods are suitable for the people who live in such a climate. Yams, for instance, are a regular food in Africa. So you can see that even though the lips of a person from a tropical climate can be very wide, those kind of lips are in balance for that kind of climate. In this case, wide lips do not mean the person's digestive system is too yin. This goes back to the earlier teaching I gave you, that we are the products of our environment and the natural foods of our environment. The strength of your digestive system determines whether you can live on a diet of whole foods, such as whole grains, beans, vegetables, seeds, and sea vegetables, or whether you have to eat some animal sources of protein. You need strong intestines to absorb all the necessary nutrients from these foods. As we will see later in a lecture I'm going to give about some of the world's long-living people, a person with strong intestines can live on small amounts of simple food because the intestines will thoroughly absorb the nutrition from whatever is eaten. When a child's intestines are too weak to absorb all the nutrients from whole foods, he will often need to eat foods that are easier to absorb, such as dairy foods, in order to grow properly. Macrobiotics teaches that if you, as an adult, have intestines that are too weak, you may not be able to sustain yourself on a mainly vegetarian diet of grains and vegetables. In this case, you may need to eat a certain amount of the food your body is used to digesting, such as meat and dairy. When your intestines become stronger through a good diet and through properly chewing your food, you will be able to better absorb all the nutrients you need from a more vegetarian diet. People with weak intestines develop allergies easily. According to macrobiotic principles, most diseases stem from weak intestines. If a woman has a large mouth, which indicates that she has weak intestines, she should be very careful during pregnancy not to indulge in yin foods. If she does, her child can inherit her weak intestines. If she does not indulge in yin foods, her child can have strong intestines, stronger than her own. The area around your mouth indicates the constitutional strength of your reproductive system. The larger the area between your nose and mouth, the stronger your reproductive system. The more pronounced the ridges extending from the nose to the mouth, and the more developed the chin, the stronger your reproductive system, as you see in this photograph of the Cheyenne Indian wooden leg. Wooden Leg fought in the battle against Custer when he was 18 years old. This is a photograph taken of him in 1913. Wooden Leg has a deep vertical cleft between the ridges extending from his nose to his mouth. This vertical cleft is called the philtrum. Ohashi, author of Reading the Body, writes, "A clear yang philtrum indicates deep constitutional strength. People with yang philtra are often ambitious, focused, and goal-oriented. People with light or shallow philtra have more yin constitutions. They prefer to work with their minds rather than their bodies. They are gentler. They are simply not driven by overwhelming energy, as are those with prominent philtra and strong yang constitutions." End of quote by Ohashi. Today, many people don't have these lines between their nose and mouth at all. And if they do have them, the ridges often become less distinguished or totally disappear by the time they reach their 40s, because their reproductive systems become weak as they grow older. Many babies are born without ridges between the nose and the mouth. A cleft in the chin also indicates a strong reproductive system, as shown in this slide. The cleft right here in the chin. The next slide shows the facial characteristics of someone with a weak reproductive system. A weak reproductive system is indicated when you have a small area between the nose and mouth, less developed ridges or no ridges extending from the nose to the mouth, an underdeveloped chin, and long eyelashes. We have been focusing on the individual features that show the strength or weakness of specific organs. I would like to show you some people who have an overall yin or an overall yang constitution. This man has a very yin constitution. He has a long, thin face, round eyes, a long, thin nose, underdeveloped nostrils, a large mouth, and underdeveloped cheeks. Next we have Josephine, Napoleon's first wife. She lived from 1763 to 1814. Again, we see a long, thin face, round eyes, a long, thin nose with small nostrils, and underdeveloped cheeks. The area around the mouth, which shows the constitutional strength of the reproductive system, is underdeveloped. One of the reasons Napoleon divorced her was that she could not bear him a child. This is Napoleon II, Napoleon's son from his second wife, who was a Habsburg. He too has a long face, wide-set round eyes, and underdeveloped nostrils and cheeks. He died at age 21 of tuberculosis, the Habsburg disease. This Flemish woman from the 17th century also has a yin constitution. She has a long, thin face, a long neck, a thin nose with small nostrils, and large, wide-set, protruding eyes. Her eyes also reflect a sanpaku condition. When one is sanpaku, the white of the eye is visible underneath the iris when one looks straight ahead. In China and Japan, it is said that people with a sanpaku condition attract accidents, disaster, or a violent death. This woman was murdered when she was 40 years old. As I said at the beginning of this lecture, when you consume an excess of yin foods for an extended period of time, your condition and eventually your constitution become more yin. Excess yin foods can cause exaggerated features such as protruding eyes, a protruding nose that is long and thin, and a swollen face and swollen lips. An interesting caricature that illustrates this point is the painting of the potato eaters by Dutch artist Vincent van Gogh. Now this is a caricature, and how this came about, I will tell you. In Holland, potatoes were first introduced into the country by Dutch explorers returning from South America. When the people ate them, they got sick. As a result, the Dutch government forbade the people to eat potatoes. But the poor people, desperate for a cheap source of food, ignored the government's ban. They grew their own potatoes and ate them as the main part of their diet. In 1885, Vincent van Gogh characterized them in this painting called the Potato Eaters. You can see that he painted the peasants' faces to resemble potatoes. You know the old saying, you are what you eat. Over the last 4 centuries, the royal families of Europe often had the yin features that are now common in most people born in the 20th century. This is because the royalty started eating refined, imported, and unbalanced yin foods long before the common people were able to afford them. Even to this day, yin features are considered to be fashionable. All you have to do is to open any magazine and look at the fashion ads. Tall and lean was and is the definition of elegance and beauty. In fact, throughout the centuries, painters often portrayed the aristocracy or royalty, and sometimes saints and military leaders, as taller and leaner than they actually were. I would like to show you a series of portraits of royalty from the last 4 centuries that have yin features. This is Catherine the Great, 1729 to 1796, Empress of Russia with her husband Peter. This is Maria Carolina, Queen of Naples and the 2 Sicilies, 1752 to 1814. The next is James I, King of England, and James VI, King of Scotland, 1566 to 1625. Juana, Queen of Castile, 1479 to 1555. Mary, Queen of Scots, 1542 to 1587. Christina, Queen of Sweden, 1626 to 1688. Elizabeth I, Queen of England and Ireland, 1533 to 1603. Henrietta Maria, Queen of England, 1609 to 1669. James II, King of England, Scotland and Ireland, 1633 to 1701. Prince Charles Edward of England, 1720 to 1788. Prince Frederick Louis of Wales and his sisters, 1707 to 1751. All of them painted with the same yin, quote, royal characteristics. Henry IV, King of France, and as Henry III, King of Navarre, 1553 to 1610. Louis XIII, King of France, 1601 to 1643. Charles I, King of England, Scotland and Ireland, 1600 to 1649. Ferdinand I, Emperor of Austria, 1793 to 1875. Note the small ears. Charles II, King of Spain, Naples and Sicily, 1661 to 1700. His yinness has actually distorted his face. So it is popular today for people to change their natural features through plastic surgery. The most well-known case is Michael Jackson, who had his flat nose with wide nostrils changed into a thin, pointed nose with small nostrils. There are also people who have had their lips enlarged. Most people admire the large lips, the big eyes, the thin noses, and the small ears of the fashion models and movie stars. But every one of those features is a sign of a weak constitution. So whose standard are they following? It's the sick leading the sick. An extremely yin condition is a body in the state of disintegration, decay, disease, and death. I believe that people are attracted to people with yin conditions and yin features, such as I've shown you, because they are attracted to death. People are attracted to death. It is one of the primal points in the unconscious, as psychologists tell us. People sell products by implanting images of death. So where people are not polarized to eternal life, they're polarized to death. You find that yin constitutions are caused also by squandering of the life force and the sacred fire, which also is a vibration of death. Sex played out to its extreme is the death of the body because of the loss of the sacred fire. So people are attracted to people in whom that process of the spending of the sacred fire is taking place. It's almost like people who like to have dead flowers in their homes. People collect dead flowers. I don't mean dried flowers. I mean flowers that are wilted. I have known many people who keep wilted, smelly flowers. It's the odor and vibration of death that people are attracted to. And when you see the extreme yin, that soul and that consciousness is in that process of going down in a negative spiral. And a negative spiral unwinding is releasing the energy of life in the body. And so there is a sense that there is something energetic happening, but the energetic thing that is happening in the wrong way. When there is an upward positive spiral of a yang condition, a strong condition carrying itself and expressing itself, it is moving upward. It contains itself. It is not giving off its energy, but its energy is held strong. These people are active and dynamic. And they are not the symbols that we find in our magazine, advertising everything from cars to products to clothes to everything under the sun. So when you think about that, it's like a falling star. The fallen ones, as they go down in a yin condition. And everybody follows after them because they feel the titillation of the senses as they blast out that energy and spend it, and they themselves disintegrate, whether it's rock stars, movie stars, etc. So now I'm going to show you some yang faces indicating that the person has a strong constitution. This is Gautama Buddha, who has a perfect balanced face. He has a long torso, a short neck, and large hands, all signs of a yang constitution. Gautama's features show a very strong yang constitution. He has a round face. His eyes are slightly close together, which indicates a strong liver and gallbladder. His large ears indicate a strong overall constitution and strong kidneys. His cheeks, nose, and nostrils are all well developed, indicating strong heart and lungs. He has a small mouth, indicating a strong digestive system. His eyebrows are long and well curved, which shows the potential for a long life. All his features show that his mother ate a well-balanced, primarily vegetarian diet. Next, we will examine Lord Maitreya. He has a very balanced face. His face is round with eyes that are set slightly close together. He has a well-developed nose and wide nostrils, and a mouth that is as wide as the nostrils. He has well-developed cheeks, large ears, and a short neck. These are all signs of a yang constitution. Next is Lord Shiva, with perfectly balanced facial features. A round face, a short neck, eyes well set, not too wide apart and not too close together. A well-developed nose with wide nostrils, a small mouth, and well-developed cheeks. Here is Kuan Yin, a strong yang woman with a round, almost square face. She has well-set eyes, a well-developed nose, small mouth, a large area between the nose and the mouth, and a well-developed chin, which shows a strong reproductive system. She has very large ears, a short neck, and a very long torso. This is how Kuan Yin is typically portrayed in Oriental artwork and sculpture. All her features are young. The artists that brought forth the great statues and paintings, likenesses of the masters whom we love, must have had more than simply a sense of what was the right portrayal of the right kind of body that they should show to have the people identify with and see as their leaders and their masters. It gives us the sense that going far beyond the Yellow Emperor's time, there was a knowledge of all of the teaching that I'm giving you. How else would all of these ancient artists be coming up with these perfectly balanced constitutions, even down to the size of the torso and so forth? Now we look at a present-day artist's version of Kuan Yin, who did not have this knowledge and was most likely influenced by the role models of royalty, movie stars, etc. of today. Her features are altered in order to make her look more fashionable. The ancient Kuan Yin has a large head, which is more yang. The modern Kuan Yin has a smaller head, which is more yin. The ancient Kuan Yin has a short neck, more yang. The modern Kuan Yin has a long neck, more yin. The ancient Kuan Yin has straight shoulders, more yang. The modern Kuan Yin has drooping shoulders, more yin. The ancient Kuan Yin has an almost square face, more yang. The modern Kuan Yin has a heart-shaped face, more yin. The ancient Kuan Yin has large ears with long earlobes, which show that her mother would have consumed a mainly vegetarian diet during her pregnancy. Her ears are attached to the head starting at eye level and extending far down on the head. The earlobes are detached from the head. Both these features show that her mother would have had a mainly vegetarian diet rich in minerals. The modern Kuan Yin has earlobes that are attached to the head. This shows that her mother would have eaten an excessive amount of animal food during her pregnancy. The bottom part of the ear is attached to the head at nose level. This shows again that her mother would have eaten an excessive amount of animal food during pregnancy, causing a lack of minerals. An excess of animal food also causes the ears to be positioned higher up on the head. The ancient Kuan Yin has very narrow eyes, more yang. The modern Kuan Yin has less narrow eyes, more yin. The eyes of the ancient Kuan Yin are slanting upwards at the outer edge, which is very yang. Eyes slanting upward at the outer edge are a result of the mother eating well-cooked and well-salted vegetables and grains during her pregnancy. The eyes of the modern Kuan Yin are also slanting upward, but not as much. They are less yang. Eyes that are slanting downward at the outer edge are caused by too many yin foods in the pregnant mother's diet, including less cooked, less salted vegetarian foods, fruits, and fruit juices. The eyes of the ancient Kuan Yin are well set, more yang. The eyes of the modern Kuan Yin are set far apart, more yin. The ancient Kuan Yin has very long eyebrows. The modern Kuan Yin has eyebrows that are less long. The ancient Kuan Yin has a large, more well-developed nose than the modern Kuan Yin, who has a shorter, less developed nose. The ancient Kuan Yin has more pronounced ridges between her nose and her mouth. The modern Kuan Yin has no ridges between nose and mouth, but just an indentation. So much for religious art then and now. Now let's look at some pictures of children from different cultures. All of them exhibit balanced yang features. This little boy lives in Afghanistan. Notice his large round head and large ears. This boy is from the island of Mindanao in the Philippines. 20 years ago, a tribe that still lived at that Stone Age level was discovered on this island. This is one of the first pictures taken of them. Can you see the perfectly balanced features on the face of this boy? He has a round face with well-proportioned eyes, wide nostrils, a mouth that is just as wide or smaller than the nostrils, and a well-developed area between nose and lips. Here are more pictures of the people of this tribe. They all have well-balanced young faces. This little boy lives in Peru, South America. Everything about him is round and sturdy. He's a very strong, young little boy. This girl is from Burma, Southeast Asia. Notice her well-set eyes, wide nostrils, small mouth, large area between nose and mouth, and well-developed chin and cheeks. Her eyebrows show her mainly vegetarian diet. This Eskimo girl is from the Canadian Arctic. Again, we see the same young features, well-set eyes, wide nostrils, a large area between nose and mouth, well-developed chin and cheeks. This boy is from Brazil. You can see that he has many young features. This girl is from Bangladesh. This girl immigrated from the Soviet Union to Alaska. Notice her round face, her narrow, deep-set eyes, her nose of average length and roundness, her small mouth, her well-developed cheeks and chin. This little Asian boy has very balanced features. This boy is from the British Isles. His face shows a constitution that is not the most young, but very resilient. Notice his large ears and especially the iris of his eyes. This is the right position of the iris. You should be able to see the upper half of the iris, not the lower half. This boy has the potential to live a long life because of his strong constitution. This boy from Swaziland has a very young constitution. He has a round, almost square face, well-set eyes, wide nostrils, and a cleft in his chin. His ears are small. Many of the African people have small ears. This Japanese Boy Scout has the same strong features. A round face, well-set eyes and eyebrows, a well-developed nose with wide nostrils, a large area between nose and mouth, a small mouth, and large ears. This is a Seminole Indian boy who lives in Florida. Note his large ears. This little boy immigrated from Holland to America. His parents are on a macrobiotic diet. He has beautifully balanced features, a round face, well-set eyes, large ears, and long, well-formed eyebrows. Neither of his parents has such well-balanced features. His mouth is the same width as his wide nostrils. He has a large area between his nose and his mouth. These American girls lived at the beginning of this century. They all have the same young features, round faces, eyes that are deep set and set slightly close together. One by one by one. What did they have in common? They ate the same kind of food that was available at that particular time. All have well-formed eyebrows, a well-formed nose with wide nostrils, a large area between the nose and the mouth, and a small mouth. These are 4 girls from Glastonbury, Montana. They are all on a macrobiotic diet. We see in them the same exact features as in the American girls who lived at the beginning of this century. Round faces, well-set eyes, well-developed noses, and smaller mouths. Now I will show you families from different countries. This is a man from Zaire in Africa with more than half of his 36 wives and his 25 children. They all have very strong features, but very small ears. This is a close-up of the husband with a few of his wives. Note the extremely large area between their noses and their mouths. They have very strong reproductive systems. These women are from Afghanistan. They have round, shining faces, small, deep-set eyes, wide noses, and small mouths. What do they have in common? They eat the same diet. This is a Navajo family. Again, we see the same features. How is it that people from all of these locations around the world wind up with the same balanced features, because they are eating the basic foods of their environment. They are not eating civilization's foods and refined foods. They are eating what the land gives them where they are, and they are still eating according to the traditions of their ancestors. They may not know why they eat what they eat, but they continue to eat it because it is tradition. So that's the Navajo family. Next we see a Mexican family. Round faces, strong features. This family is from Tibet. They have deep-set eyes, wide noses, and large ears. They need to be young in order to withstand the harsh climate of Tibet. When people eat foods native to their region, their children will naturally develop constitutions that are in balance with their environment. They will develop the kind of stature and strength they need to survive in their particular environment. In the book of Macrobiotics, Michio Kushi writes, "The traditional observance of ecological eating, which means eating the foods that grow in one's environment, has made people living on islands and the seashore smaller and more active, more young, than those who are living in the inland areas of continents. The reason for this is that in coastal areas and on islands, people tend to eat more fish and seaweed, which are young foods. There is also more salt in the air and in the vegetation. People take in salt through the lungs and skin. With a heightened humidity, they consume less liquid." Remember, young foods such as fish and young condiments such as salt have a contracting influence on the body, which would cause people to be short and young. Natives of European coastal areas and islands, where it is colder and less humid, have traditionally used less salt and drink more liquid than in the more humid islands of the Far East, such as Japan, Taiwan, and the Philippines. Yin beverages, such as water, have an expansive influence and cause the body to expand and grow taller. Thus, the use of less salt and the consumption of more liquid makes the coastal Europeans larger than the islanders of the Far East. People living inland where the air is dry consume more liquids than those living in areas of high humidity. They also take in less salt, both in their food as well as through their lungs and skin. These two factors, consuming more liquids and taking in less salt, cause them to have more expansive characteristics. They are generally taller than coastal peoples. Kushi writes, "Interestingly, stories of giants are almost always related to continents, while stories of dwarfs come from islands. For example, the leprechauns of Ireland, the kappa of Japan, Paul Bunyan from the American continent, and the abominable snowman from the Himalayas." Who knows, maybe he is abdominal. Peninsular parts of continents have mixed stories, such as the Scandinavian fairy tales, which include both giants and little people. That's the end of Kushi's quote. The following slides show the difference in stature between people who live on the coast and people who live inland. These are the Nootka Indians from Vancouver Island, British Columbia. As we said, people living near the sea tend to be smaller. These are the Kwakiutl Indians from British Columbia. They are also small. Here are some Crow Indians from the Crow delegation of 1872 who visited Washington, D.C. You can see how much bigger they are. Crow Indians were the Indians who once lived in the Yellowstone River Valley. The Crow were Plain Indians who migrated to Montana in the 18th century. In the Yellow Emperor's classic of internal medicine, the emperor's minister, Chi Ba, says that the people who live in the mountains are robust and energetic. When the first white men came to this area of Montana in the 18th century, they found the Crow Indians living in the mountains north of Yellowstone National Park. Crow author Joy Yellowtail Toinita writes in From the Land of the Crow Indians, as has been observed and recorded by the early explorers, historians, the artists such as George Catlin and others who came in contact with the Crow Indians. The Crow Indians were healthy and robust, and the men grew to immense size. French trappers who came to the Yellowstone River Basin in 1743 described the Native Americans as the beaux hommes, which means beautiful men. According to Paul C. Foley, the Crows were tall and stately, most of them being 6 feet tall. Osborne Russell describes the Crow Indians in his Journal of a Trapper, written between 1834 and 1843. He says, "The Crows, both male and female, are tall, well-proportioned, handsomely featured, with very light copper-colored skins. Sickness is seldom found amongst them, and they naturally live to a great age. I have never known a mountain Indian to be troubled with the toothache or decayed teeth. Neither have I ever known a case of insanity except from known and direct causes. I was once upon a particular occasion invited to smoke in a circle comprising 13 aged Crow warriors, the youngest of whom appeared to have seen upwards of 100 winters, and yet they were all in good health and fine spirits. They had long since left the battleground and council room to young aspirants of 60 and under. The facial features of these Crow Indians show that they all have a very strong constitution. This is the Crow Indian, sees with his ears, and his family. Again, they are tall and robust and have young features. Like most traditional cultures throughout the world, the American Indians maintain certain patterns of eating and living that enable them to enjoy superior health. Before the Crows migrated to Montana, they were farmers as well as hunters. They lived on the Missouri River in North Dakota. Frank B. Linderman says that at one point the Crows established fairly permanent villages and cultivated fields of corn and pumpkins. However, once in Montana, the Crows maintained a more nomadic existence, following the buffalo herds. The Crow Indians depended heavily on bison, or buffalo, for food, but they prepared their meat in a very different way than we do today, making it less acidic and more alkaline. We need a balance between acid-forming and alkaline-forming foods to remain healthy. The Indians changed the acidic quality of their meat by various means, such as drying and smoking it, and by pounding into it a large amount of chokecherries and rose hips. Today, the way most people cook meat is to cook it in some kind of oil or fat. When oils are heated to 160 degrees or higher, they are known to produce many substances that are toxic to the body. Another way the Indians mitigated the negative effects of excessive meat was to consume not only the meat of large and small game, but also the animal's organs and body parts, such as the tongue, stomach, large and small intestines, kidneys, liver, heart, and udder. The organs are alkaline-forming and balance out the more acid-forming meat. The Crow Indians also had vast knowledge of the use of herbs, plants, and fruits that grew in their environment. They used a large amount of roots. Rodney Frey writes in his book, The World of the Crow Indians, complementing the meat was a diet rich in various seasonal berries and roots, such as choke cherries and wild turnips, and an abundance of corn, beans, and squash obtained in trade with the Hidatsa and the Mandan. That's the end of Frey's quote. Because corn, beans, and squash are vegetable quality foods, they balance out the animal meat. In addition to these factors, the meat of the wild animals the Indians ate was probably less acidic than the meat of today's domesticated animals. William Tara addresses this issue in his book, Macrobiotics and Human Behavior. He writes, "Several years ago I had the opportunity to meet a native African who was the son of a chieftain in his village. He had been educated in Great Britain but spent part of the year in his homeland dealing with tribal affairs. In the course of our conversation, he related to me that he would only eat the meat he called bush beef, the meat of wild animals. When I asked him why, he told me that wild animals had vitality and agility, and if he ate those animals, he would correspondingly inherit those qualities. He said that whenever he consumed pigs or cows who were slow-moving and dim-witted, he started to feel that way too." The next week, I attended a lecture by Michael Crawford, the author of an interesting book called The Food We Eat Today. Mr. Crawford related in his lecture the differences in fatty acids between animals who run wild and graze freely and domesticated cattle. He said that the consumption of meat from most domesticated animals can contribute to physiological changes, not only because of the high percentage of fat in the meat, but also because of specific differences in the fatty acids present. Could it be that Mr. Crawford and the African chieftain's son were addressing the same issue from different perspectives? One set of conclusions was drawn from a simple observation of nature in action in human experience, the other from analysis in a laboratory. If we are to truly understand the world we live in, it is necessary to combine both viewpoints. That's the end of Tara's quote. We have to remember that we are all laboratories. We are all scientists in the laboratory of our own bodies. Our bodies are our laboratories, and that is where we prove or disprove many theories that come to us. Now I would like to show you some photographs of Crow, Sioux, and Cheyenne Indians who lived in or near Montana in the late 19th century. Again, their features indicate a very strong yang constitution. This is Sitting Bull. He was the medicine man, chief, and spiritual leader of the Sioux Indians. The Sioux Indians lived in Minnesota and the plains of North and South Dakota, east of Montana. Sitting Bull's features show that he lived on a balanced diet of well-cooked foods that were partly vegetarian and partly animal food. They also indicate that the main part of his mother's diet during pregnancy was vegetarian. Again, if the Sioux did eat a large amount of meat, then they must have radically changed the quality of the meat by the way they prepared it. A large amount of animal food prepared the way we cook meat today would have made his eyebrows slant downward towards the middle of his face. It would have made his nose shorter and higher and his nostrils less wide. His nose would have tilted up so that the openings in the nostrils would be clearly visible from the front. Next we have a picture of Wooden Leg, a northern Cheyenne warrior who fought in the Sioux campaign in which Lieutenant Colonel George Custer was killed. We saw his picture before and pointed out the well-defined lines between his nose and mouth, indicating a strong reproductive system. All the features of this Cheyenne warrior are still very well defined, even though he is older. This is One Bull, a Sioux Indian, the nephew of Sitting Bull. He also has very young and more vegetarian-like features, a round face, large nostrils, and straight eyebrows slanting downwards toward the outside of the face. This is a Crow Indian named Curly. He was one of Custer's scouts. He grew up in Montana's Crow country. We can see that the people who grow up in this area and live in balance with the environment became naturally tall and sturdy, with beautiful balanced features. If we live and eat in harmony with this climate, our offspring can have the same strength and features that this Crow Indian has. This area of Montana, with its extremes in climate, the long cold winters and the short hot summers, brings forth plants that are tough and fibrous. Anybody who eats our vegetables here at the ranch knows just how fibrous and tough the vegetables can be. Also, our grains are tougher and take a long time to cook. These tough young plants make tough young people. You don't necessarily need meat to be young. But not everyone can live on a totally vegetarian diet. According to macrobiotic principles, if you need to eat animal food, the best choice is fish, or the meat of the wild game, such as elk or deer, that inhabit your locale. After the dictation this evening, you will enjoy a macrobiotic diet with the option of elk from our environment. From the macrobiotic standpoint, the more physically active you are, the easier it is for your body to process animal food so that it doesn't cause an imbalance in your system. Since most of us don't live the rugged outdoor life that the Indians lived, meat does not necessarily need to be the main part of our diet. Another factor in determining one's need for animal protein is gender. Macrobiotic experts have pointed out that there is a basic difference between men's and women's metabolism. Anne Marie Colbin writes in her book, Food and Healing, women are more efficient at building up tissue. Men are more efficient at breaking down tissue. As a result of this metabolic inequality, men do need more protein than women in general, though individual needs may vary. That's the end of Colbin's quote. Anne Marie Colbin cites a long Japanese tradition along these lines. According to Japanese folklore, she says, men should eat more animal protein foods, women more vegetables, and if they share the same meal, the male's portions should be larger. He should also be given a small dish of salted fish or beans to forestall any tendency to overexpansion or weakness. Studies have shown that once long-lived traditional societies began to adapt foods from another climate zone or use processed food, they lost their adaptability to their environment. This is exactly what happened to the American Indians. Prior to their contact with a white man, the Indians lived in harmony with their environment. This is the true macrobiotic way of life, living in harmony with your environment, living in harmony with the great Tao, which we now understand to be the yin and yang forces of the cosmos. But slowly their way of life was taken from the Indians. According to Carol Van West, from 1877 to 1884, professional hunters, as well as the Indians, slaughtered nearly all the buffalo in the Yellowstone Valley. He writes, government officials encouraged the killing of bison in the belief that if the herds disappeared, Native Americans would be forced to change their way of life and would settle down and become civilized. With the Treaty of 1868, the Crows lost their status as an independent nation and became wards of the United States government. At that point, they became reservation Indians and were forced to eat white men's food, which the government rationed out to them. The Crows, for instance, received rations of rice, brown sugar, salt pork, salt, coffee, meat, and tobacco. Even before the Indians lived on reservations, they would trade with the white settlers for sugar. In Andrew Garcia's account of his life among the Indians of Montana, he tells of how the Indians would trade buffalo robes for brown sugar, then devour 10 pounds of sugar in one sitting. By being confined to reservations, the Indians no longer had the freedom to live in harmony with their environment. After they were living on reservations, they developed diseases such as tuberculosis and diphtheria. Even before they were living on reservations, many Indians died of smallpox, which they caught from other Indian tribes who had gotten the disease from white travelers. As a result of changes in their diet, the features of today's Indians are different from those of their forefathers. Although most of them still have strong constitutions, they are no longer as strong as their forefathers, and their conditions are often weak. Many of them are plagued by diabetes, gallbladder problems, and cataracts. To illustrate the changes in the Indians' constitutions over the generations, I will show you some present-day Indians who acted in the film Dances with Wolves. This is one of the main characters of the movie, Kicking Bird the Medicine Man. Although his features indicate a fairly strong constitution, he does not have the very young features we saw in Indians that lived a century ago. The Indians that lived 100 years ago had eyes that were set close together and were deep set. This Indian's eyes are like those of most present-day Americans. The width of one eye fits between his two eyes, and his eyes are not deep set. 1 century ago, Indians had large noses with wide nostrils. This Indian's nose is an average American nose. It is smaller, thinner, and has less developed nostrils. This is the Indian who played the role of Stone Calf. He has more young features than Kicking Bird. His eyes are small and deep set. His nose is well developed and has wide nostrils. His mouth is small. The area around his mouth, which as I said shows the constitutional strength of the reproductive system, is well developed. His eyebrows are well formed and thick. His features, however, are not as well defined as they were in the Indians who lived in the 19th century. The ridges extending down from the nose to the mouth are unclear. His lip line, especially around his lower lip, is also unclear. This shows weakness in the intestines. This Indian played the role of Ten Bears. His face shows strong young features, but it also shows that he has consumed a lot of animal food and too many extreme yin foods, such as alcohol, sugar, and coffee. These foods weakened his respiratory system, his liver, kidneys, intestines, and spleen. This Indian acted in the role of wind in his hair. In comparison with the Indians of a century ago, his features are less young. His eyes are set slightly wider apart and are less deep set. His nose is not as well developed, his nostrils are less wide, and his face is longer and thinner. He was born with a strong constitution, but as with the other Indians we have just seen, his features show that he is developing problems in his organs, especially his liver, from the overconsumption of meat and alcohol. If this boy didn't have long black hair and dark eyes, you would hardly know that he was an Indian. His face is long, his eyes are small but not close set or deep set. His nose and nostrils are underdeveloped, his mouth is large. Although the area between his nose and mouth is large, the ridges are undefined. The nose is tilted slightly upward. The openings in his nostrils can be clearly seen from the front, which indicates that his mother ate an excessive amount of animal food during her pregnancy. His features show that his organs are already beginning to suffer from excess yin and excess yang foods in his diet. The Indians who once lived in this area of Montana and the Indians who gave their lives fighting the white men in this area lived in harmony with their environment. They were strong and vibrant. Some of the members of our community today are reincarnated Indians who once lived in this very area of Montana. A lot of people have been attracted to come to Montana because they have ties to this area. I would like to give you a little more background on the Battle of the Little Bighorn, which was fought, as I said earlier, about 60 miles southeast of Billings. You will recall that this was known as Custer's Last Stand. Here, the U.S. 7th Cavalry, under the command of Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer, fought Sioux and Cheyenne Indian warriors. The Indians who fought in this battle were not native to the Little Bighorn area of Montana. The Sioux and Cheyenne were nomadic Plains Indians from far eastern Montana, the Dakotas, and Wyoming. In 1868, the Sioux had been given reservation land in the Badlands in South Dakota. Later, white men found gold on their reservation and began moving in. This and other encroachments upon their land led to a Sioux uprising. Under the leadership of Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse, some Indians fled the reservations and journeyed to Montana. The Battle of the Little Bighorn involved 6 Sioux bands and 1 Cheyenne band who had camped together to protect themselves against U.S. soldiers. This battle was the high point of the Indians' determined resistance to being confined on reservations. It left Custer and 5 troops of the 7th Cavalry under his immediate command dead on the field. The battle was a great but short-lived victory for the Sioux and Cheyenne. Following the battle, government troops flooded into the area to prevent further Indian victories. In December 1890, the Sioux surrendered all hopes of an independent life outside the reservation when they were tragically defeated near Wounded Knee Creek in South Dakota. The Indians who lived in the Paradise Valley were the Absaroka, or Crow Indians. They came to be known to the white man as the Crow Indians because French trappers translated Absaroka as crow, sparrowhawk, or bird people. Some say this was a mistranslation and that Absaroka means fork-tailed bird, not crow. They were a nomadic people who wandered not only within Montana but possibly as far as the Great Salt Lake. In exchange for protecting white men who traveled through their lands, they were granted nearly 39 million acres for a reservation. However, a subsequent series of treaties reduced their holdings to 2.5 million acres, which is the size of their reservation today. It is located southeast of Billings and includes the Custer battlefield. The Crow were traditional enemies of the Sioux. Some Crow Indians served as scouts for Custer and fought in the Battle of the Little Bighorn under Major Marcus Reno. This is the end of my story on the tragic loss to all of us of the Native American Indian, from whom we could have learned how to live in harmony with our environment and with the great Tao. Today, many of us have inherited bodies that are more yin because our mothers may not have eaten the best food while they were pregnant with us. If you, the mothers and fathers of this community, eat the proper foods and feed your children the proper foods, 2 generations from now, your grandchildren can be tall and robust and have the strength that comes from this environment. The reason we should be interested in learning more about the proper macrobiotic diet, for whatever climate we live in, is that we and our children need the proper diet to regain our former strength and resiliency. We need to be able to take our places next to Sanat Kumara's legions for the protection of the cause of light. And we need strong bodies, strong minds, a strong will, and inner contentment with our souls and our God, and outer contentment with our environment and our universe. Every single one of us here can look around and say, I was there somewhere on the battlefields of the world, defending light against the dark ones. And I am here again, and I want to make the most of my body and live as long as I can to turn around what the fallen ones have done in my absence. And I want to be sure that my offspring have that same chance. I want to tell you that I know from Mark Prophet that you and I carry the genes of our ancestors in this life, and we also carry the spiritual genes of our own individual causal bodies. Mark Prophet said that we could transcend our human genes. I know that if I make my body a fitting chalice for God, I can be a conquering hero in this life. And I know that if you can make your body a fitting chalice for God, you can also be a conquering hero in this life. Now that we have come together again in this community of the Holy Spirit, and now that we are able to bring forth souls of light, are we going to neglect so great a salvation by not giving back to these souls, the very ones that died in these plains, the bodies they need to carry on this battle of light overcoming darkness unto victory? This concludes another chapter in my ongoing lectures on how you can celebrate your immortality every day of your life. If you would like to be seated, I have a brief addendum. I would like to add a word of caution to pregnant mothers, to you who want to become pregnant, and to anyone who wants to pursue the macrobiotic diet. Throughout this section on diagnosing constitution, I have said that when a pregnant mother eats an excess of foods, such as meat, eggs, or fruit, the organs of her child can become imbalanced and therefore more susceptible to illness. I want to emphasize that it is an excess of these and other foods that causes the problems. Macrobiotic experts say that if you eat foods such as meat, eggs, or fruit, occasionally or in moderation, they will not necessarily cause an imbalance in your child. Some women who decide to have a child want to change their diet while they are trying to conceive because they think a better diet will make their baby strong and healthy. However, experts tell us that a woman should not make radical changes in her diet while she is trying to conceive. Neither should she suddenly change to a macrobiotic diet after conceiving or while nursing. The reason for this is that if her body contains many toxins accumulated from eating chemicalized foods, sugar, and animal food, a macrobiotic diet will start a natural process of cleansing. This will cause toxins and wastes from her body to be discharged into her blood. Since the mother's blood directly nourishes the baby, the fetus will take in toxins from the mother's blood. The cleansing that occurs when you are on the macrobiotic diet is heavier during the first 3 months to a year that you are on the diet. A woman trying to conceive, an expectant mother, or a nursing mother who wants to change to a diet like the macrobiotic diet or a vegetarian diet should check with her doctor first. And anyone who has special health problems or considerations should definitely get their doctor's advice before changing their diet. Macrobiotic teachers advise those who want to change to a macrobiotic diet to start with a transition diet. The transition diet is described in the book Making the Transition to a Macrobiotic Diet by Carolyn Heidenreich. If a woman has been on a transition macrobiotic diet that includes poultry, eggs, and/or dairy foods prior to the time she tries to conceive, she should not eliminate these foods from her diet until after she stops nursing her baby. Macrobiotic counselors often suggest the following transition diet for anyone who wants to start on a macrobiotic diet, including pregnant women. The transition diet consists of 50% grains, 50% grains, 20% cooked vegetables, 20% cooked vegetables, 10% raw vegetables and fruits, 10% raw vegetables and fruits, 10% soup, and 10% animal food, which includes poultry, dairy, fish, and eggs. 10% animal food, which includes poultry, dairy, fish, and eggs. These figures are approximate and should be adjusted to your individual needs. Macrobiotic experts say that generally in the diet of a pregnant woman, the amount of animal food does not have to exceed 10%. Eating a diet of 10% animal food will keep her from eliminating toxins and wastes from the animal food she has eaten in the past. As I said, these toxins could weaken her child. Sugar, red meat, and chemicalized, frozen, canned, and processed foods are not recommended for the transition diet. A pregnant woman should balance the 10% animal food by making sure she eats a diet that is 50% grains and 25 to 30% vegetables. Women who have been on a standard macrobiotic diet for 1 year or longer before conceiving can usually continue to follow the standard macrobiotic diet during pregnancy. But they may need more fish and occasionally some dairy products or chicken. If a pregnant woman who has followed a macrobiotic diet experiences strong cravings for animal foods or sweets, she can try eating a small amount of the food she is craving. This often satisfies the craving. As an alternative, she can prepare a macrobiotic substitute for her craving. For instance, she can eat scrambled tofu prepared with tamari instead of scrambled eggs, sautéed seitan or fried tempeh instead of meat, amazaki pudding or stewed fruit instead of sugar or sweets, or tofu cheese instead of cow or goat cheese. Michio and Aveline Kushi have published the recipes for these foods in their book, Macrobiotic Pregnancy and Care of the Newborn. Michio Kushi teaches that for anyone making the transition to a macrobiotic diet, the best way to reduce cravings for sweets, fruits, juices, and coffee is to reduce the consumption of salt, eggs, fish, or other animal foods, and to eat plenty of vegetables, especially vegetables that are cooked for only a few minutes. It is important for a woman who wants to get pregnant to take responsibility for her health and the health of her child by educating herself. In this, she needs the support of her husband. She should understand the proper nutritional balance she needs during pregnancy and lactation. She should be aware of the changes that her body and her baby will be going through. The book Macrobiotic Pregnancy by Alice Feinberg presents a very balanced approach to being on the macrobiotic diet during pregnancy. It explains which foods supply the different nutrients the body needs during pregnancy. For an in-depth study of the macrobiotic diet during pregnancy, I do recommend Michio and Aveline Kushi's book, Macrobiotic Pregnancy and Care of the Newborn. Anyone who wants to pursue the macrobiotic diet can start on the diet by reading the books I've named and other books on the subject. But you may also want to see a trained macrobiotic counselor. Each person's constitution and condition is different, and a counselor can help you tailor your diet to your specific needs. Again, if you have any special medical problems, be sure to consult your doctor. Every woman needs to be under the care of a doctor during pregnancy.